All right. I have just decided that we are just not going to stream to Twitch right now because OBS is just completely screwed up with Twitch. So I just tried to do the stream a second ago. Didn't work. Wasn't streaming to Twitch correctly. We're just going to get over that and move on. Okay, so this stream is going to be quick. It's not going to be, anything huge. We're just basically going to be, and now it looks like the YouTube stream isn't working, question mark? Oh, I wish things would just work. There we go. Okay, we're live. Um, okay, so this stream is going to be quick. It's going to be simple. It's just going to be planning. We're going to go over kind of the stuff that we want to build in the future, the kind of research that we want to do in the future, all of that fun stuff. And then we will, we'll kind of move on with our day. So this isn't going to be long. It's not going to be a long video. I'm going to upload the VOD fairly shortly after finishing. But we're just going to basically plan out what we want to do in the future. So let's switch over to screen. We're going to be in Excalibur pretty much the entire time. Let's thank the good folks who subscribed on YouTube or followed on Twitch. Swesty, thank you so much for following on Twitch. Oni Gonzo and Andre Louise, thank you for subscribing on YouTube. Very much appreciated. All right. So, planning things out, let's take a look. Right here in Excalibur, we've got what we have now. We've got process enumeration, kinda. So we haven't actually thrown that into anything yet. So let's put kinda. Then we've got an incredibly basic message sending function. We also now have this stuff. So let's throw that over here. And scoot it over a bit. Got notifications still going. I think those are the ones that I already thanked. Let me make sure. Yeah, same ones. Okay, so we finished those last night. If you missed the stream last night, we got registry stuff finished. We sent over all of the fun information over to RC2. That is working well. So let's wipe out all of this stuff right here. We've got a couple of bugs, or at least one bug to work on. We need string termination working. For some reason, whenever we're pulling strings from the registry, it's broken. We're printing like a ton of like extra characters. I think it's a string termination issue, I would imagine. And we want to start storing data. So we want to store the username. We want to store, we want to create a basic victim object. So IP information, timestamp information, registry information that we pull out, things like that. And for that, we'll need an initial victim endpoint. So that's all backend stuff. We also want to establish some persistence. That's going to happen fairly early on. And we want to start receiving commands and fun stuff like that. So those are kind of like already on the docket. What we also want to do is process injection. That is probably going to be our next big project. So we're going to do process injection. And for that, we need to finish process enumeration. Basically, actually implement that within the malware. We've already got establishing persistence. We want to gather network information. And we want to drop new executables. So the dropping new executables part is going to allow us to make this malware multi-staged. Multi-stage malware is kind of like the big hotness. That kind of is what separates like noob malware from like real malware that actually can be used. So that is what we want in our malware. We've got some notes about registry operations down here. Let's not worry about that as much. We'll throw that over here somewhere. This is from my rant on why the Windows API sucks. FYI, the Windows API sucks. Let's look at research that we want to do. Some of this will be side research. Some of this will be like active research within our malware development journey. So let's just call this research goals. All right, so these are all research goals, big and small. We want to reverse our own malware. We want to, let's see, let's start talking about the initial stages of talking about, let's make this a little bit larger. Let's do the initial stages of starting to talk about exploitation. So do some exploiting. And within that, do some exploit research. I'd really like to get some like bog standard like malware research or sorry, exploit research done at some point in this kind of journey that we're on. So at some point we'll work on that. Reverse engineer our own malware. At some point we'll want to do that. Reverse engineer other malware. I got a request from somebody to do, I believe it was Nighthawk malware. I want to say that's what it was called. Yeah, Nighthawk hacking tool. So at some point we'll work on that. Let's see. So that's called Nighthawk hacking tool. We also want to reverse, there's a couple of pieces of malware that Guided Hacking did reviews on. Hacking, malware, samples. There's one, Mandusaka. That one I've done a little bit of research on. That one's kind of fun to reverse. And maybe some Metasploit. So we'll do some reverse engineering on that. What else? Some basic Windows security research. So, like some PrivS stuff. So privilege, escalation, where to find juicy information, maybe some social engineering stuff, things like that. Okay, so that's a good start on our research goals at least. So in terms of like malware research, we want to find different ways to do things. So different places to find juicy info. So to find the same juicy info. So basically last night's stream, we found the username value within the registry. That was easy as all hell to find. What other places can we look to find that same information? Maybe if like the registry isn't forthcoming with that information, I would imagine you're always going to find the username within the same place in the registry. But where else can I find that information? Let's talk about pivoting. So network pivoting / spreading locally. Let's see what else. What else are we thinking? That's all I can really think of right now. There's probably some cool stuff that I'll end up kind of thinking about on the fly, and I'll let this Excalibur kind of space be where I put all of those nodes. But that's what I'm thinking thus far. So that's what we want in the near future, at least. We're probably going to finish this string termination bug and some of the back-end stuff next week. I think that's probably one of the streams that we'll do. Probably early week we'll work on the back-end stuff, finishing that bug. And at some point we need to start getting command stuff working. So like basic forwarding between command.exe and our back-end, things like that. Eventually we'll get to that point. I think that may not start next week, may not start until next year. Don't really know. But we'll get to that point eventually. That way we have like a solid actual rat. We've got process injection. That will probably start next week. I would imagine we'll start looking at process injection next week. But I think almost definitely this is going to be our next big step, because we do need to fix that bug. And we need to get our back end kind of working. So we'll definitely get that next week. So draw a line here. Next week. And then after that, we'll probably focus more on getting process enumeration actually finished. And then look at like sending basic commands. I think the sending basic command part is going to be a lot of fun, because that's going to actually enable us to do cool things on like the actual communication between the malware and the back end. So that part's going to actually be interesting and like a lot of fun to implement, and it's going to be kind of like a proud moment where like we've got real malware that can actually do things, because we'll actually be able to run commands. So I'm thinking this chunk right here next week, work on process enumeration, like actually getting that working right here. Probably work on that next week as well. So I'm actually going to go ahead and cut that out and add that to next week's tasks. Let's see. Scala is kind of a pain in the ass to deal with sometimes. So hop down here and paste that. Then persistence. Ooh, I'm making a mess of this. There we go. Persistence down here. Let's make this box a little bigger. So that'll all be, if not done, started next week. That's the goal. These other research goals, those will probably start. We'll probably start knocking those out next year after the holidays, because once the holidays start, I'm not going to be streaming as much. I'm going to be traveling next week towards the tail end of the week, so probably no Friday stream. Probably most of the streams are going to be like Monday through Wednesday, almost every day probably. That'll be the goal. So that's our research goals. That's what we want Rusty Wolf to end up looking like. Rusty Wolf is essentially, for right now, going to be a multi-purpose rat. It's not going to be like a super focused loader or stealer. We might develop some loaders for it, and we might develop a stealer for it. But right now we're keeping it generic. And just make it do everything. And we'll, maybe focus on specialization later on down the line. That's kind of what I did with my career. I was like, I'm going to focus on everything and specialize later. And here we are. I'm a software developer. So I think that's going to be our focus. We've got a good start now, even though like looking at this list next to this list, and especially next to that list, it doesn't look like we got that much done. But we've got something useful. I mean, it gathers information and sends it to a C2. Even if it's not super useful information, it's still information. I might honestly throw the persistence establishment in next week or fairly soon. Honestly, just because I think it might be easy. If we just throw the path of the executable, if we copy the executable over to a specific path where it can hide, and then throw that path into the startup registry key, I'm pretty sure that's establishing persistence. I think like that will basically, once we reboot the PC, it'll restart. I think. Don't quote me on that. We also have to get, so this is kind of like a general requirement, but it is a requirement. You have to have some sort of logical flow. Right now, our malware doesn't follow any specific flow. It lands on system and just does whatever I'm working on right now. So at some point, there's got to be a logical flow. With lands on system, it does this task, this task, this task, and then it waits. Or, it waits for a command, essentially. So there's got to be a logical flow to it at some point that we've got to work on. And finally, we need to establish some sort of testing. Don't know, honestly, how you do test-driven development on malware. I don't know that there are exactly like many research papers on that, but at some point we got to work on that. Okay, we've got our research goals. That was really all I wanted to do with this very short stream. Wasn't exactly lively, wasn't a long one, wasn't exactly useful. That wasn't effective. But we've got our research goals figured out, and we can at least end on that. So thank y'all so much. This has been a great week for streaming. My channel's like blown up over the last week. Had a lot of great chats with people. Got a lot of work done on our malware. So it was a really good week for streaming. I appreciate y'all. Take it easy. Peace.